Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Flip Genius podcast. Excited today to have on Paul David Thompson out of Little Rock, Arkansas. Welcome, Paul.
Thank you for having me. We're going to have a good time.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm looking forward to this podcast today for a couple reasons. We are in a mastermind group together, so we know a lot of the same people, but we haven't spent a ton of time together. And I'm interested to hear more about what you do. I know it's playing more in the commercial space than most of the people we talk to on our podcast. So excited for all of our listeners to hear more about the commercial side of the business. And selfishly for me, I want to learn more about it as well. I've tiptoed into it and look forward to hearing more about it.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, welcome. Thanks for being here. So to start off with, why don't we start off with your background? What were you doing before you got into real estate?
Yeah, I'm a recovering employee. I was a corporate wage slave for 17 years. So worked in the corporate world, kind of worked my way up the corporate ladder. I got an engineering degree, and then middle management, and then get lots of employees and a big budget, and I worked for an internet service provider, so I helped build our little sliver of the internet, which was kind of fun. But once you get into management, the corporate politics just become vicious and nasty, and it's just you either get promoted to CEO or you end up getting replaced. So there's corporate power struggles, and you end up getting replaced sooner or later, unless you just happen to be the king of the mountain. And I wasn't the king of the mountain, so I end up getting laid off. And it's this kind of like I kind of saw that coming and figured it's just not if but when I get laid off. And I didn't want to have to move. I live in Little Rock, which is kind of a small market, and so for me to stay in that same industry, I would have had to move to Atlanta or Dallas or someplace really big, and I didn't want to do that. Like my wife and family are from Arkansas, and so I'm kind of stuck here. And so I wanted to find another way to make an income that didn't rely on some corporation. And so I went looking for an option, and I started with single family.
Okay. So when was that you left the corporate world and started in your single family business?
Well, it left me in 2017.
Okay.
I started in 2015 buying rentals, single family rentals.
Okay.
And with a plan of like a 3-year exit strategy, and 2 years into my 3-year exit plan, I was kind of like towing the edge of the cliff, thinking about to jump, and someone just came by and pushed me. So I had to finish building my plane on the way down. And everybody who runs a business knows that there's all kinds of ups and downs that comes with that. And so I've been trying to not crash ever since, I guess.
Yeah. I've had somebody describe it like you're standing on the dock about to jump in the lake. You want to jump in the lake really bad. You just need somebody to give you a little extra nudge to knock you over into the water.
That's what happened.
They nudged you into your new life of freedom and chaos as an entrepreneur. So you said you were buying rental houses. Was your goal at the time to build a rental portfolio of single family homes?
Yeah. And that's what I did. Okay. I mean, for the first 3 or 4 years, that's all I did. I mean, for the first 4 years, I built a portfolio of 40 rental properties. I did a lot of wholesaling, and I did a lot of flipping as well, and realized that I am not a good operator. Like, I don't like hiring the contractors and managing the details and doing the tenants and leases. Like, I'm a classic entrepreneur where I'm a quick upstart, big idea. I don't want to figure out the details. Like, that is not my personality at all.
Yeah.
And that cost me a lot because it took me a while to figure that out. And so I've since been learning how to run businesses where I can focus on my strengths and avoid those things which I'm not good at, so I love finding deals and negotiating deals. And so that's what I spend my time doing now instead of being an operator.
Okay. So did you ever bring somebody on in that operator seat?
Yes, I've attempted multiple times. And I've had some really good experiences. I've had some not so good experiences. I've had business partners where we were making lots of money together, and then once we started making money, then we really started having problems because now we all wanted all the money. So we all thought we should be in charge, and so we didn't think about that going into it. We just thought, let's make some money, and so we kind of learned those lessons the hard way. Like, I think I was able to still manage to salvage those friendships. And so like when we see each other in the grocery store, we don't like, punch each other. But I mean, like our egos and our relationship was definitely bruised for sure.
Mm.
And I've learned a lot. And so I've kind of started that over again with a new endeavor, having with those lessons learned.
Okay. Yeah, similar. I think we've had three operations managers who have never worked out, and I think part of that for me has been what I've noticed, recognized when I'm hiring people is I'm the same as you. So as an entrepreneur, vision, strategy,
Yep.
Kind of the chase, the hunt, and
Yep.
then big game hunter, and then the operations side of it, the day to day operations. Just I can do it for a period of time, but I'm not good at it, and it
Same.
drains me.
Same.
So we've hired three operations managers, none of whom have worked out. And it's, again, I hire people who are like me that I like spending time with and I like talking to. And we have similar backgrounds and similar skill sets, which obviously is not what I need to be doing. I need to be hiring people that are opposite skill set. Yeah.
Yep. I made the same mistake.
So I feel your pain. I understand. So you built 40 houses, built up 40 rental properties in your portfolio. Were you buying those houses off market, remodeling them, putting tenants in place, and then holding on to them, refinancing and holding on to them?
Yeah.
Okay. And you said you did some wholesaling and flipping too.
Yeah, I did sub-2 owner finance, BRRRR strategy. I mean, if you can do it in single family, I've tried it. And I've wrap around mortgages and sell them on notes and the whole thing. And again, conceptually, I love learning that stuff, but I never really picked my thing that I was going to be the best in the world at. And so I ended up doing a lot of it just good enough and sometimes not that well at all. And, it cost me quite a bit. Some really painful learning lessons on how to effectively find your thing. And that's kind of the reason I selected commercial real estate is because I can take that big game hunter energy that you're talking about and I can get one deal and typically when you get in these bigger deals, they become a team sport. It's hard to do them by yourself. And when you go into it with that in mind and you find that appropriate partner who knows how to do the thing better than you do, then it tends to work better. And so you kind of know that going into it because it's kind of like the nature of the beast. Whereas when you're starting like a services company or a coaching company, it can be really tricky because I don't really know what I need in an operator for that kind of company. For a rental property, to me, it's super obvious. It's like you need someone who can be an asset manager and manage the property manager. That's a much simpler business to manage in the scheme of things as compared to a traditional entrepreneurial type upstart where you have a product or a service. It's a much more complicated business, in my opinion.
So but before we jump into the commercial, and I definitely want to spend some time there, but how did you learn to do all the single family stuff you did, flipping, wholesaling?
Good question.
You didn't have a background in it, so how did you learn how to do all that?
I remember not knowing what escrow was. I mean, I remember like, what do you mean? Like, what are you talking about when you pull title? What does that mean? I didn't know. I had purchased my own two properties, my first residence, and then I moved to another, upgraded to a bigger house when I had kids. And I did those two transactions before I ever went into real estate as an investor. So I didn't know jack. I mean, like I had to take a big piece of humble pie when I got started in this business. And so one of the things I did is I followed a piece of advice that someone said is go and find a mentor. And by finding somebody in your surrounding cities around you, not your city, but like in your state, but surrounding cities, and go find somebody who's doing the business and ask them if they will show you the ropes in exchange for time or money, whatever you can offer them. And so I did that. I sent a bunch of emails out to websites that I found doing real estate in my area. And one guy replied, he's about an hour away from me. And he said, yeah, I'll show you how to do it. But in order for your application is to go and get the book, The Richest Man in Babylon, take a bunch of notes, write a 3-page handwritten essay, and then mail that to me, to my P.O. box, and I'll read it and I'll get back to you. And that was his like application fee. It was kind of a cool, like Mr. Miyagi kind of moment. And so for the next 3 or 4 years, I ended up writing 3-page handwritten essays on, 9 or 10 different books. And one of the a piece of advice that he gave me was by reading what I was saying in the books. He said, I see that you're smart, you're educated, but you're not informed on this topic. You need to go to these weekend events with like Peter Fortunato and Dyke Spotiford and, all these grand old men of real estate.
Yeah.
It costs a few $100 to go to it. You catch a flight to Atlanta or Tampa or wherever they are, and you just get a master's class in the concepts of real estate. With no sales pitch in the back of the room. There's no, I mean, they have no ulterior motive. They just like filling those rooms up and talking, right? I mean, they're just like brilliant investors. And that's how I learned. I did that for like 3 or 4 years. I went to like 6 of those per year for 3 or 4 years. And I felt like I got a master's class in real estate. And I only knew to do that because of this guy that suggested I do so.
Okay. And then while you were doing that, was he teaching you more about real estate, showing you how to do it specifically?
Not really.
Or you learned
really.
it all?
I would say the first 6 or 7 books were all about concepts. Like every once in a while, he would quiz me on my financial calculator. He would say, if you have a sub-2 deal and this was the payment and what would be the interest rate? And I mean, he was really big on knowing and understanding the financial calculator. But the mechanics of it, I got from going to the events, and then I would take what I learned from those events and I would apply it into my local market. So I was like, okay, this is how you market. You put out bandit signs, and they call you, and you negotiate with them, and you find their motivation. Why would you sell such a nice house like that anyway? All the things that you learn how to do, right? And then I would do a sub-2 strategy, and then I would do an owner finance, and I would do a lease option. I would just figure out what made sense in that situation and apply these like building blocks of deal structuring that I was learning to deals as they came to me.
Okay. Yeah, that's great. Any other books? You mentioned Richest Man in Babylon. Any other books that stick out that you remember, some of your favorites?
Good question. One of the best books I ever read on just like understanding like how to evaluate a deal was the ABCs of real estate.
Okay.
And it's actually on multifamily, but it applies to really any sort of asset class. It's just like the absolute basics, ABCs of how to revenue minus expenses equals your net income, et cetera, right? It was just like the super basics parts of it. And he has like this like checklist built into that book that just allows you to like think through your process of doing the due diligence.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. I think that's a great lesson that he taught you too. I went through a mentoring program years ago, and we did a book a month. It was a year-long program. We did a book a month.
Nice.
And we had to do a net out, what they called it, a net out, which is basically a 1-page written, what you're taking away from the book. So not a book report and not I like the book or I didn't like the book, but write down all of the points, all of the things that stuck out to you so that when somebody says, hey, have you read Richest Man in Babylon, you can go back to that net out and go, oh yeah, here was the topic. But I did the same thing. I read that. Think and Grow Rich was another good one for me. Of course, Rich Dad, Poor Dad was a big one for a lot of real estate people. So all great real estate books, but really focused on mindset.
Yeah.
Which is what helped change me from, like you said, an employee to a business owner.
Yeah.
So what made you moving along in your progress here? You have your portfolio, you're flipping houses, wholesaling houses, and then how did you decide, hey, I want to move to the commercial? I want to focus my time on commercial properties instead of single family. What gave you that idea?
So our wholesaling business kind of self-imploded because me and my business partners couldn't figure out how to slice up the income that we were making from it, basically. And so lots of lessons learned there. And so instead of competing in the same marketplace, I just decided to kind of just do something a bit different. And one of the challenges that I noticed with having 40 rental properties across 3 different counties in central Arkansas where I live here is managing those things was even with a property manager, taking care of these things was just a nightmare. It was just constant repairs and making decisions on tenants and evictions and just making sure I had the taxes paid every year was just like a bunch of them were sub-2, and so like things, the longer you hold sub-2s, they often get hard because they get the note gets purchased a couple times, and then they don't have the power of attorney anymore, and then somehow or another you lost the power of attorney, and you're like, what? Like, how am I supposed to figure out what's left on this property? It's just all that kind of operational headache that comes with owning properties. just kind of doesn't happen when you own one property that's 50 units, because it's all under one roof. You have one mortgage payment, you have one tax payment, you have one insurance payment. The operational headache is so much less when you have one 50-unit apartment complex than 40 single-family properties. And so I was able to double my portfolio with one transaction. And then I realized just the time and energy I spend on these 40 units, or just a couple of those units, compared to the one property that once it was stabilized, I just don't think about it, because it's much easier to find professional grade property managers in the multifamily space, I found, than it is in the single family. It's not to say you can't find good single family managers. They do exist, but they're harder to find and they're fewer and far between. Whereas I found I was making more money with fewer, bigger deals, and I had a whole lot less headache.
Wow, that's great. So your first deal was a multifamily 40 plus unit multifamily deal?
Yeah. And so I bought a couple of like duplexes and a sixplex when I was doing the single family stuff. Some I kept for a while, some I sold, but I'd done small, really small multifamily, like 12 and less. But I hadn't done anything like over 20 or 30. And when I did, like, it wasn't that much more work. Like, it was like I was able to buy it with creative financing terms. It was kind of like a combination of, I kind of built this kind of elaborate capital stack. But once I did that, that was done. And then the operations of that was incredibly easy.
Okay. So you bought this property, you said value add. So you bought a property, it needed work, needed to be stabilized, or maybe you mentioned stabilized. I said value add, but either way, you bought a property that needed some work, used creative financing. So you went in, rehabbed the remaining units, and then filled them with new tenants?
Yes, filled them with some of them new tenants. Some of them I just released to the same tenants with better pricing. And kind of added a couple of different revenue streams, concierge trash, just like these little tricks that you have, and just smoothed out the headaches of management that comes with any property. And once it became stabilized, once I got some of the units that needed some repairs repaired, I just like it maintains 95% occupancy. And I just meet with the property manager once a month for, like, I don't know, 15 minutes. And we just talk about what's happening with the property, anything new, anything new coming up. And so I end up spending, on the high end, 4 hours a month on those 50 or my total multifamily portfolio, which has now grown to beyond that. I have different managers for every single one of them because they're all over the place, but I just don't get, like, I'm the asset manager, and being an asset manager is a lot less work than being the on the ground property manager.
Yeah. So you did the first one. How did you find that property? Was it off market?
It was kind of one of those like pocket listings where it wasn't listed, but there was a broker involved. So it was just kind of like a referral from a friend who was looking to sell out of his portfolio. And it was in my backyard and fairly close to me. And so I thought, well, that this is kind of fortuitous. I've been looking for something else to do, and I've been contemplating real estate. And I had another friend that was involved in real estate, the property management side of commercial properties, that gave me some tips and said, I help you run the numbers, and these numbers look good. And I was like, I think, what you're doing, it probably makes sense, provided they agree to your financing terms. I think it's going to work. And he did. So it worked out well.
Okay. So you do your first one, it goes well. Do you then sell off your single family portfolio to have the capital and the time to focus on the other? Or do you still have the...
Yeah. So any property now in my 40 unit, I still have a lot of them, but as the single family causes me headaches, I just punch them. I just kill them. And so like John Schaub has this concept of like his punch list, and he's like, he has this reverse order of like his favorite to his least favorite. And so he kills his least favorite properties. Every couple of years, you just say, like, which one of these properties is, for whatever reason, causes me the most expenses, that has the highest headache and turnover, has it's just a problem property. Like, you just don't know why. It just always is. You just kill those. Even if you don't make a lot of money on it, just kill it. The time and effort spent on that property is killing you when you could be looking for other deals or optimizing the deals you do have.
Yeah. So how did you find your next property? I know after you did that first multifamily, you said, I want to focus on more commercial stuff. Did you then start a strategy to find properties off market?
I did, and it took me a while to find them. But what I ended up doing was partnering with other people who were operators. So, given
Mm-hmm.
I'm not an operator, but I do like to raise capital. I do like to structure deals. So I'm good at the deal structuring side. And so what I would do is I would partner up with other operators in Texas primarily because that's where the numbers just were making sense in Texas where they weren't in Arkansas. And the
Mm-hmm.
upside is so much more in Texas than it is in Arkansas because it's a growing marketplace. And so in Dallas and Texas, or Dallas and Houston specifically, I have like fractional shares of like several very large apartment complexes where I'm a GP in the deal,
Mm-hmm.
general partner in the deal,
Yeah.
but I have no money in the deal and I have very little responsibility.
Okay.
I mean, I do meet and I help vote, but I may have 7% ownership stake, right? So
Yeah.
it's like it's not a big responsibility, and like my vote doesn't sway what we're doing too much. And
Yeah.
those people have become my friends, and we meet every 2 weeks or so on a very quick general partner meeting, and we just kind of get updates on how the thing's doing.
Yeah, the great thing you said though there for people to take away, 7% of a watermelon is a whole lot better than 100% of a grape.
Right.
So
And it's like I won't say there's no work because I still got to do some communications to the investors, but I mean, like I'm not on site on these properties ever. Like once I went and saw it once, I've never been back, and I never will. I mean, I have nothing I could do there if I wanted to. I have no authority to do so, and
yeah,
so I just have basically control without a lot of responsibility, and so I have only upside because I have no money in the deal.
yeah. So you're talking to other operators. Are y'all going in and buying new properties, or are you going into properties they already own and helping them restructure them?
There's typically properties that they're buying. So somebody is
Okay.
selling these properties. Like it's funny, like we've bought a couple of properties from like hedge funds,
Hmm.
and they're like they just bought too much, and then this particular 300 unit property in Houston was their dog, and they just weren't managing it well, and they sold it for like a $10 million discount from what they bought it for. And so we
Wow.
felt like we were getting the discount. It's like a $60 million purchase, and so we bought it for 50 instead of 60, right, or 48
Yeah.
instead of 58. I can't remember exactly. I mean, that's how closely involved I was. I can't remember the purchase price of these things because I mean it's been a few years, and so now we own that property, and these were existing, like not new builds, but Class A, B plus type properties in Houston and Dallas that I found a couple of operators in those two cities that I really liked and trusted that I met through masterminds. And so
Mm-hmm.
when they look for deals now, they say, hey, do you want in on this one? And if I can help raise capital and be a participating member of the general partner team, then great. If I can't and I'm not able to help, then I was like, I got to pass on this one. And
Okay.
I always hate when that happens because it's like, I want a piece of that pie and they're willing to share it with me, which I feel like is a very small ask for the proportionate compensation that I get.
Yeah. So when you're looking at those deals, are you that particular deal? Let's say, did you set up some type of seller financing or creative financing on it, or was it a typical? You guys are doing a bank loan and then
That was a
syndicating a
syndication.
portion of it. Okay.
Yeah, that was they go and qualify. Like I don't sign on the loan because I'm under 20% of the ownership,
Okay.
and so I don't have to. My net worth is not at risk, but the primary operators, the key partners are sourcing and signing it and doing most of the operations, and then we just meet as key partners. And those when you get up to the 200 and plus unit apartment complexes, I'm sure there are some that do owner financing, but typically that's a syndication.
Yeah. So transitioning a little bit here, I know that you also teach other people, you mentor and coach other people on how to do commercial
Mm-hmm.
as well. And when I think about it, as I mentioned before we started recording here, we're doing a self-storage development, but it was a deal where I bought the property and took it through zoning, and then I brought in a partner who had more experience with it.
Perfect.
But I'm interested in going out and doing it again and again and again.
Mm-hmm.
My problem is finding the next deal. It doesn't have to be specifically land or specifically self storage, but so the questions or the things that I think about in my head, and I think a lot of our listeners would question is, number one, how do you find the properties, and number two, how do you finance the properties? What would you say to people who have those questions when it comes to commercial
Yeah, that's
specifically?
pretty much the question that I answer for everybody. Everybody has the same question. It's like, how do you find
Okay.
these things, and how do you know if they're a good deal? And then once you do know they're a good deal, how do you finance it? And a lot of times, the way you finance it is how it becomes a good deal. So I tend to focus on, for me and my clients who are on the newer side that are making this transition from single family to the commercial asset class. And, just a quick definition for folks if you don't know, commercial just means anything that's not 1 to 4 units. That's residential, and then everything else is commercial. And we typically focus on things that are cash flowing right away. So we don't help people buy land and develop. That's a strategy, but that's not for the faint of heart. We want to do the minimum work required to get into like a deal that could change your life, that has the least amount of risk. And so we like the 5 to 50 unit apartment complexes. We like the RV parks, mobile home parks, and self-storage. I refer to those 4 asset classes as the kissing cousins because they're the commercial asset classes that are providing commercial grade services to consumers. So they're fairly easy to understand and they're fairly easy to underwrite. You can simply use some very sweeping expense ratios. You know how when you use single family and you're doing a rental, you're like, oh, it's like the 50% of the income will go to expenses or something. We do the same thing with commercial for these kissing cousins. We say, for a storage facility, we assume that it's going to be like a 35% expense ratio. For multifamily, it's like a 45% expense ratio, right? We just make these kind of like sweeping assumptions, and we get to that net operating income, and then we make an offer based on that NOI, right? The net operating income. And so what we're looking to do is buy properties one of 3 ways. We want to buy it at a deep discount where we cash out the seller. And that cash offer, like everybody knows, is going to be an insultingly low cash offer. It's like an 11, 12 cap. Or if they have existing financing in place that has good terms, we can keep that financing in place, sub-2, wrap, assumption, some combination of that. Or the favorite way is where we're buying with owner financing. They own it free and clear, and we buy it. We typically give them their price. It's 7 cap or better. We give them their price, but then we set up payment structures that, like at 2.5% to 4% interest, that makes sense for us, to makes it cash flow to give us at least a 15% return on investment.
Okay. So you hit on a couple of things there that I want us to dig into a little bit because, again, a lot of our listeners are residential folks. And so 2 things that you talked about specifically that I want you to cover in a little more detail. But one of the things, the 2 things we'll talk about, NOI and cap rate. So NOI, as you said, is net operating income. Obviously, when you're evaluating commercial property is valued differently than single family property. Single family property, of course, is valued based on what other properties in the area have sold for. So we look at after repair value. We're looking at comps within a quarter mile, half mile, 1 mile radius. We're saying a like kind property that has similarly 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, 1,800 square feet. Here's what those 3 sold for. So that's probably what this one's worth. And regardless of how nice you make it, as long as you're not adding on to it, you're not going to get a whole lot of more value out of it than what others have sold for, because an appraiser is not going to appraise it for 3 times what all the neighbors are selling their house for.
Right.
So jump over to commercial. It's not valued like that. It's valued based on NOI, net operating income. And I want you to explain what that is. And then we'll second we'll cover cap rate, because that's a quick number that can tell us if the property is a commercial property, is at the value we want, if it's low or if it's high. So let's start with NOI. You said that's not net operating income. How do you determine the NOI?
Yeah. So with any business, when you think about what you're doing is when you're buying a business, which real estate is just like another type of business, you're looking at is what kind of revenue stream will that business generate? And so it's revenue minus expenses. That's your net income. In the commercial world, we just happen to call it net operating income. I mean, it's the same thing. You hear about people referring to the EBITDA or the net income of a business. It's just the earnings before all these other deductions, right? Same thing with net operating income. Same concept. It just, real estate happens to be a much simpler business as compared to most other classic businesses, because all we're doing is renting rectangles. I mean, it's the simplest business in the world, right? You're just taking some rectangle and you're renting it out to somebody. And in our case, we focus on the consumer grade rectangles, which are RV parks, mobile home parks, self-storage and multifamily. Those are like the consumer grade users that use that. And so we just simply take the revenue, what is the rent per unit, minus the operating expenses, taxes, insurance, management fees, reserves, repairs, et cetera, maintenance, the normal things you would think of that are costs or expenses for a single family property. Same for multifamily, same for these other properties. You deduct that out and you get the net operating income, the net income. And that is the number that you're going to make per year if you were to buy it all cash. That's the distinction, right? And so when you look at the cap rate, it's, well, what is the cap rate is short for capitalization rate. And it is just basically the way to compare different asset classes to each other. So if a property is trading at an 8 cap, that 8 cap is, I will get an 8% return if I put in all cash. That's simply all it means, right? And so that's how I compare a multifamily property in downtown Dallas to a RV park in rural Louisiana. So an RV park might trade for a 10, 12 cap in rural, the South someplace, or in downtown Atlanta or downtown Dallas for a multifamily, they're going to trade for a much more compressed cap rates, 3, 4, 5%. And so basically, what kind of return on my money do I want to get? How does this property operate? And so you can kind of compare that to like a return you might get in the stock market of, say 8, 10, 12%, whatever you think you can get. That's about equivalent to what the cap rate is for the net income that you're getting from a property.
Okay, that's a great explanation. So, and cap rate is determined by, just to go one step deeper on that, it's determined by net operating income divided by purchase price?
Yep.
Okay. So yeah, the net operating income that he talked about divided by what the purchase price is tells us what your annual return is going to be. So the cap rate is basically your annual return if you were to pay cash for the property. And so, like you explained, it's a little bit different based on asset class. And I know self-storage right now is selling at like 8 to 10, maybe 11 if you find a good one.
Yep.
I had a friend that I had lunch with 2 days ago who just bought a mobile home park at a 14 cap, which he was really excited about. So, and it's in reverse too, right? The cap rate. So you usually you want to buy at a higher cap rate and sell at a lower cap rate.
Yeah, because the cap rate is like the return you're going to get if you were to buy it all cash. So you want to sell it at as high as a cap rate as possible because my return is going to be 14%. And then I want to sell it for somebody else who is not as shrewd and is going to buy it at a 10 cap. Because my valuation goes up. And the difference here between a 14 cap and a 10 cap can be millions of dollars. It's profound, the kind of wealth you can build by increasing just a couple of dollars per month in income that has a really big impact on the value of the property.
Yeah, and I think the way that you drive value in commercial property, like we talked about before with single family and how it's so different, is that as I can increase that NOI, my purchase price didn't change, but as I increase that NOI, it improves my cap rate. So it allows my cap rate to go up, which means when I sell it, I'm able to sell it at a lower cap rate or make more money, right? So you mentioned, if you buy a 50 unit and everybody's paying $500 a month and you raise their rent to $550, well, all of a sudden $50 a month times 50 units, whatever that is, that goes to your NOI, which improves your cap rate. Now the property is worth more than when you bought it, and all you did was decided to charge them a little bit more in rent.
Right, and that happens as over time. Rents tend to go up, not always, but they tend to, and your cost of your financing tends to stay the same. Not always, but tends to stay the same. And so, just like with single family, all the benefits you see with single family when you own, buy, and hold rentals, you just get the same benefits, just compounded on like however many times the units that you have.
Yeah. And you can do that. I've heard in multifamily. I haven't done any multifamily myself. I actually had one in San Antonio under contract for 180 units. We didn't end up closing on it. But people will they'll add paid laundry. So if you have space or if you can create space, add a washer and dryer, several washer and dryers to the facility that are, you have to pay to use. That's another way to increase that NOI because you're now charging people. In the self-storage world, it's selling boxes and packing equipment. Insurance is a huge one. Yeah, you can sell insurance to each of the renters who are staying. Insurance. Yeah, for sure. And then rental trucks for people to use when they're moving is a big one for us on the self-storage side. You can rent trucks. So between, not just are you getting the income off of the facility itself that you built, but by adding those additional things like packing materials, insurance, rental trucks that they can use to move their stuff into their storage unit. That's all additional income, which increases that NOI.
Yep. And really all you're doing is renting rectangles to consumers.
Yeah. Renting rectangles. I like that. I'll have to use that. So yeah, that drives then the value of the property up, because as you increase NOI, you're increasing the value of the property. So I love that. I love the commercial side of it. Again, I'm just starting to dip my toes into it, but I love doing that. So how do you find these properties? That's one thing we didn't specifically cover. And I know there's a bunch of different ways, but are you doing it just like I do single family? Are you looking for off market? You're sending them letters? Are you cold calling them? What are you doing to find all these properties?
Yeah, there's really only 3 ways. You don't use like the bandit signs and the pay-per-click and all the things that we do in the single family space. Just doesn't work as well in the because if someone owns an apartment complex, they're not going to Google and saying sell my apartment fast. That's just there's no search volume there. So because the seller that you're working with is a little more sophisticated. They're a business owner in most cases. Well, I mean, whether they meant to be, they're a business owner. A lot of times they inherit the property or something like that. So what we do is there's just 3 fundamental ways. It's on market, it's referrals, and then it's off market. And on the off market side, there's always a couple little tricks, but fundamentally you either call or text them or send them letters. That's just all there is to it. There's just no other way to do it. Maybe you can get it through like Facebook groups and stuff, but I would kind of consider that kind of like the referral side of things, right? So you can go to public websites like Crexy or LoopNet, sometimes Zillow, and find listings of just like we would do from an MLS kind of side on the single family space. And then you can ask for referrals from either brokers or from people in your Facebook groups or your school groups or whatever. I run my own school community. And so a lot of my leads end up coming from people who are in my network. And I built my own school community for the very purpose is I wanted to source people who had access to deals. I want them to be my bird dogs. And so now they bring me deals and I evaluate them. I just got off a call on a deal in North Carolina where someone brought me a really good seller financing deal that I think I might end up buying. So I might be adding to my portfolio in North Carolina. Because I have a school community. I just built that network effect. And then, of course, you can go the off-market direction where you can do the skip tracing and you can do the texting and the calling and the letters. But otherwise, I haven't found a strategy in commercial that works quite the same way that does in single family. Okay.
Yeah, I love the simplicity of that you teach is work with an agent, find something online. Whether you work with an agent or you do it yourself, find something online, something that's already listed on the market, run the numbers, make offers. The second one is referrals, just by building relationships with agents and brokers around the country, letting them know what you want. And then the third one is off market, which there's a couple different ways to get to them. I actually did have a property here in just outside of Atlanta, which was a 19 unit multifamily property. I had under contract, wanted to close. When you ran the numbers, it didn't pencil the way that we would like for it to, but I knew it was a block off of downtown, a vibrant downtown, walking, restaurants and bars. And so I put it under contract. It had an acre next to it, which was also zoned multifamily, that came with it. So I put it under contract, went through the zoning process and got that 1 acre subdivided from the other 19 units. Yep. And then it turned into a wholesale deal. So I was able to sell the 19 unit for enough to pay for all of it and cover all of my costs. And then I sold the 1 acre next to it as a commercial 1 acre to another developer who built 8 townhouses on it. So I ended up wholesaling it, but I did that one through direct mail. I sent out letters to a bunch of apartment owners, and this one called me. So,
it works.
So yeah, we found that one off market.
Yeah. And a lot of the same strategies you think of, like as the exit strategies, apply. Wholesaling, one thing that we can do in commercial that typically doesn't work in single family is you can like parcel things out, or you can like stack properties around it together and kind of do what you did and go through that zoning process and find the highest and best use of that land. And that is probably one of the best skills to have, is figure out what the highest and best use. We have clients that take motels in California and convert them over into efficiency apartments and studios and sell them. And like the highest and best use for those properties is apartments, not the kind of rundown motels that aren't doing very well right now.
Yeah, I love that. Well, man, this has been fascinating. I feel like we've just scratched the
Yeah.
surface. There's so much more to learn with this, and I'd love to learn more about it. So, if people want to get in touch with you, if they want to find you, they want to learn more about you and what you're teaching and your mentoring program. How can they find you?
Yeah, the best place to find me is on Instagram. I have a curse of a common name, Paul David Thompson. So I use all three of them. So if you go to at Paul David Thompson on Instagram, you'll find me there. And that has a link to my free school community. We talk commercial real estate, and I do a coffee with Paul most every Saturday morning. It's completely free for everybody. So come find me if you want to learn more about commercial real estate.
Awesome. I love that. And I love that you are giving away some free education. That's great for people to kind of get some value and start to learn about commercial real estate. If they feel like it's something for them, they can dig more into it. So again, thank you for being on today. I appreciate it. It's great information. And I'm going to spend some time on your Instagram page and your free school community and see what I can learn.
Yeah. Looking forward to having you.
All right. Well, that will wrap it up for us today. Thanks again to Paul David Thompson for joining us, and I look forward to seeing you on the next podcast.